Hey guys, my name is Cameron with Yates Remodeling, and on this episode of Remodeling America, I'm going to go over how to remove your horrible death trap stairs on a deck and rebuild them with something a little bit nicer. A couple tips, a couple tricks. On this episode, we're actually at my house here and wanted to refresh the deck a little bit, so I'll show you what I did, so hopefully I can help you out with your project on yours. So stay tuned. Alright, so in this episode of Remodeling America, we're going to be going through a couple of the deck building tips that I was talking about. We're actually at my house, mi casa, today, and this house is built, we're in North Carolina here, and it was built in the mid-80s, 84, 85, all still everything original. I really wanted to tear this whole thing down and start from scratch, but I right now don't have the time and I don't have the cash, but it was a bit of a death trap, so what I really wanted to do is I wanted to strengthen it up, put the structure where it really needed it, redo the handrails, fix a couple busted deck boards, redo the stairs, and just kind of freshen some things up. So I'll show you a couple pictures of what it kind of looked like before, throughout it, and right now, so you can kind of see what I was working with. And we'll show you some stuff in the middle of it, and we'll also post some pictures of at the end, and I can show you what we've done. So that's pretty much a synopsis of everything we're going to work on today. Anyway, so what I want to show you here is I'm in the middle of some stairs, so I'll just go ahead and get right into the stairs. I would say that stairs, especially deck stairs, any stairs, are honestly some of the hardest things, especially for a homeowner to do. And they're even hard for some professionals. Even some of the guys who I have that are helpers with me aren't really 100% on stairs. That's why they have lead carpenters kind of show them how to do it. So this is how you want to build your stairs every time, okay? A lot of times, stairs will have too short of a run and too tall of a rise. So what I mean by that is the distance from the back of your stair tread to the front of your stair tread. So the stair treads aren't here just yet, but that's going to be what's called your run, right? And the height from the top of the stair tread to the top of the next stair tread, that's going to be called your rise. They have codes, and they're slightly different. Most of the codes say around 8.5 for your rise, but we stick to right around 7 inches or under for a rise. And then you want a nice big run. They'd say about 10 inches, but we just use 2 deck boards, so that's 11 inches. So 2 deck boards sandwiched together is about 11 inches. So we try to stick with an 11-inch run and a 7-inch rise. Okay, how do you get that? Where do you start? All these kinds of things. Totally get it. So when you are done framing the outside of your deck, okay, that's when you can start working on your stairs. And what you want to do is figure out exactly where you need to put your stairs. You're going to need at least, I say 39 inches, and I'll tell you that why in a second, but you need 36 inches for the width of your treads, okay? So from here to here needs to be 36 inches or more, okay? But bare minimum 36 inches. Now when you're first going to start and you've laid out exactly where you want it, you have to kind of know where they're going to land, okay? Because you can't just take all your measurements you need for your rise and your run from right where the deck stops, because you have pitches in the ground, you have things that roll, so you need to know is about get an idea on where it's going to end, okay? Now when you're measuring out, just factor in 10 inches for each step. Now I know I said 11 inches for our steps, but that's because you have a 1-inch overhang, all right? The framing part of it is always 10 inches. So these pieces are called the stringers, all right? And these are going to cut out at 10 inches for each one of the stair treads, all right? So for each step that you have, factor in 10 inches of length. So when you can kind of get your estimate here, right? So you're going to say, okay, listen, my deck from the bottom of the ground, here's about 64 inches, all right? And we want to be close to 7 inches for our steps. So you divide that by 10 steps, you figure that's about 6.5 inches. So that's pretty close. You'd rather be less than more, okay? So if we're going to have about 10 steps, because we have about 64 inches, we're going to want to go out 100 inches from the face of our deck, because that's 10 steps, 10 inches per step, all right? So what you want to do is you want to butt your step and measure out to about 100 inches. So you see this is where we are. We're right at 100 inches. So right now you wouldn't have any steps here. It would just be the dirt. So you just kind of make a little mark around where 100 inches is. And then you take a piece of wood. If you have a laser to work with, that's great. But if you just have a nice long straight piece of wood, you set that piece of wood just on top of your deck, on top of the face of the deck. This is definitely a 2-man job, okay? Run that piece of wood all the way out to where your 100 inches is, and make sure it's completely level. So have somebody leveling it out, running it. And then what you're going to do is, as soon as you have that level line all the way across at 100 inches, drop your tape down to where your finish area is going to be, right? Now, what I do is I always pour a concrete pad first. I'm working with a lot of garbage that was already here, so we'll fix this up a little bit more. I've already added some to it, but we'll fix it up a little bit more and nicen it up. But I would have, as soon as I found out where my steps were going to be, did this calculation, I pour a pad. And then what you want for your pad is going to be, you need at least 3 feet wide and 3 feet long, all right, if it's going to be your landing. Okay, so you need at least 3 feet wide and 3 feet long. So what I pour is about 4 to 5 feet deep, so that they go underneath my stringers, all right? And then I pour it about 4 feet wide, so that I have plenty of space to bolt my 4x4s in. I don't like putting my 4x4s in concrete. I'll show you how to do that as well. So anyway, you've got your measurement, you've figured out where your stairs are going to be, and you've poured your concrete pad, and now this is where we are, okay? You squared it up, we're here. You got your about 5x4 pad, give or take. So as soon as you found out where you are at your 100 inches and you've leveled down, you're measuring down to your pad itself. So you level down, you've got your mark, and you find out exactly how much it is. Ours was actually right at about 70 inches, okay? So that was, so now that we know where our stairs are landing, see, because we were 64 over here and we're actually 70 here, that makes a huge difference. So you need to know where your stairs are landing. So we've got 70 inches, and we figured out that we definitely want 10 steps, because that's exactly 7 inches per step, okay? So now, as soon as you figured out that you need 7 inches of rise for 10 steps, then you can start worrying about cutting your stringers, okay? So I'll give you a little tutorial on cutting stringers. Like I said, this is probably the most difficult part. You might not get it all from this, but I'm just gonna touch on a couple things. So I'll show you how to do that next. Okay, so when you're cutting your stringers, which are those pieces that go underneath your treads and underneath your risers, you always use a 2x12. Do not use anything else. No 2x10s here, only 2x12s, okay? That's the nominal size piece of lumber. It's 2x12, and pressure treated if it's outside. So now that you know what your rise and your run is, it's 7 and it's 10, okay? So it's 10 inches for your run, 7 inches for your rise. When you first start out, you want to get yourself a framing square, just like this one, okay? And you have to make your first cut. So if you're looking at your board, the top part of it, you're going to want to hit 7 inches, all right? Just at this mark, you see where that's a 7, and then you want your other one to be 10 inches. So you angle this, trying to keep your point as close to the edge here as you can, until you have exactly 7 there and exactly 10 on this mark, okay? On the outside, and you strike your line. All right, so basically what you've done is you've kind of started your first part of your deck, okay? So what this piece is going to be is if you hold this up, this will go on the band of the deck, and that's your first step, okay? From there, what you do is you flip it around, right? Because now that you have your 7 there, that's the part that goes against your band, and here's your first step. You actually have to flip it around, go on this side, and you mark again, 7, and you do 10. Now they make little clips that go on here that make it a lot easier to use, and they keep an exact positioning. But if you just want to, if you just only have a couple steps, you can just do it this way. So you got your 7 and you got your 10, and you keep going through as many steps as you have. Now we have 10 on ours, but you could have 2, you could have 3. It really depends on your measurements. And you see, those clips are nice because they hold it in place. You don't want to jam that around. So just imagine we keep doing this all the way to the bottom, all right? So let's say we get to our bottom step. This is our bottom step. Your bottom step is going to be 1 inch, or whatever you're using for your tread material, less than the standard rise, okay? So let's say we're using deck boards, which are 1 inch. So you want this bottom step to be, instead of 7, you want it to be 6 inches. So you come all the way out to the end, you have your 10 here, and then this squares you up to your 6-inch mark. We just a little off our board. You'd mark it right at 6 inches, okay? And then you do a straight line there, and then you flip this around, right at your 6-inch mark, nice and square, all the way across, and that's your bottom. This is the bottom of your stringer, okay? And that's where it'll land. It's the bottom. You go through, you cut this whole thing out, and you set it up in place. Now when you're setting it in place, you want to make sure that you are, whatever your tread material is, which is typically a deck board, 1 inch below, because you want your deck board to be flush. So also a couple ways of doing these. Some people do this as their last step. Do not do that. Okay, that is what I call the shiesty way of building decks. Do not do that. Always make the last step even with your deck boards, okay? That's how you get a nice firm grip. That's how these hold better. There's a lot of benefits to it. So always make the last step flush with the top, all right? So hold it 1 inch down, and then you want these every 1 foot, okay? You can do them every 16 inches. Don't do that either, okay? 1 foot. Stairs are very important, and you want to make sure you build them really strong. So you set these at 1 foot. So if you're doing 3 feet, you need 4 total. So you need 1 to start, and then 1 at every foot. Now, if you're just doing the stringers without these full stringers on the sides, you can only lay these about every 7 feet without there being a support underneath, okay? I want mine to be longer, and I want it to be nice and clear and open, so I add these full-size stringers on the sides, these 2x12s, and with that, I'm allowed to go about 13 feet 6 inches. They're much stronger as well, so you'll need 2 extra ones, and then you'll just need to cut those accordingly. I like them to cover the risers and the treads, so you just have to cut those pretty much accordingly. That's a whole nother episode. But now you've got your stringers cut, you've got your everything in place. They make brackets that attach to here that you can use, but I just go with actually old-fashioned deck screws, and I like to come in at an angle. All right, that holds it a lot better. Okay, when you toenail those screws in, it holds a lot better. Instead of just a screw from the backside, I like to toenail them in. And what I also like to do is I set my 4x4s on either side, bolt it in to the frame, and then what I do is I drill a 5/8 inch through bolt that bolts both of these into that 4x4. So both sides are bolted in, super beefy. So you'll see I don't have it in yet, but it's drilled right here, and it'll have a nice bolt that goes through and holds that in place, so you don't have to worry about it ever going anywhere. Plus you have the screws, and then we'll have our risers and our treads going in on top of that. So you know how to attach them at the top. Now at the bottom, whenever you get your first stringer cut, you can figure out where you put your posts by setting it up there, squaring it off, right? So after you square your stringer off to the side, you'll know exactly where to set it, and then you mark out where you put your post. I put my post on the outside, all right? I use a bracket, a 4x4 Simpson bracket, and I either epoxy bolt it or Tapcom it into the concrete, and then I use 3-inch structural screws. I don't like nails because if you ever make a mistake or have to remove it, screws are much easier and they're stronger. I put the screws in place, make sure it's perfectly plumb, and then I'm actually going to put another bolt in here to hold this straight. And it's not in the concrete, but it's just as strong, and you don't have to worry about the rot and the issues that you have when you put them into the concrete. It's much better to always put them on top if you can. All right, so you've got your 4x4s in, you've got your stringers set. Next thing you do is put your risers on first. I like to put risers on first. So what I do with my risers is I use a 2x material. I don't use decking material, because most of the time you need, on your last tread, you need to throw a couple screws in here. When you use decking material, it just splits it every time. So you're going to want to use a 2x material. Now, normal 2x's don't come very pretty. So what I do is I rip them down to my exact height. So ours is 7 inches, so I rip them down to 7 or just under 7 inches so they don't go above these stringers. And then I plane the faces. I use a planer to plane the faces to get a nice cleaner look. And then I use my 3-inch deck screws. All right. Normally I'd be using stainless steel, but I only want this to last me a couple more years, and I'm not going to put the money into the stainless steel screws. So if you're longevity-wise, you use stainless steel. If you're only doing it for 4 or 5 years, the regular galvanized, painted will do you just fine. So I like to put 2, sometimes 3. As long as you get the top and the bottom in there to stop it from cupping or bowing, you're good to go. So I put my risers in first. This way my tread butts the back, which leaves drainage, water drainage right down, right? If you put your treads in first, there's a lot of negatives to that. For one, you're not going to get the right run that you need, because it's 11 inches for your treads, and if you put them underneath it, you're going to get not enough space. So I butt them up here, I get the drainage, I get the extra structure. So I go through and I put all my risers in first, and then I'll put in my treads. I also, on this run, it's only about 8 feet, so I'll put 1 post here in the middle to break up this section, give us a little extra strength. We'll put it here, and we'll bolt it through. So we'll probably have, you'll see a through bolt here, and you'll probably see a through bolt somewhere here. So 2 bolts in that, 1/2 inch 5/8 on both sides, right in the middle, to divide up my handrails. I screw everything off, space it out. I'll show you what it looks like with the decking boards afterwards, but this is how you start it. You'll get your risers on there first, then your treads, and you have a extremely sturdy set of stairs that will last you pretty much forever, and you don't have to worry about coming back and fixing. So that's pretty much how you put the stairs together. Okay, and when I usually cut things, especially when I'm working with treads and I'm working with stairs, I love to use my chop saw. It gives it a perfect, nice, straight cut. It's all furred up, and if you've got the space and you got the tools for it, I would 100% recommend that. Also, another little tip, in case you guys don't already do this, okay, before you make your first cut, I always recommend taking off the factory edge. Here's a factory edge. For usually, it's not usually a square. It's always rough like this, so I always love taking it off. Now, pressure-treated boards, if you get a 12-foot board, it's usually 12 foot 1 inch, okay? They actually give you that little extra so that you do have this amount that you can cut off. You see, that's that, and here's a cut that we made, okay? So the idea is to make your first cut to cut off the excess there, okay? Or cut it long to begin with and then cut it afterwards. So I'll always make sure. Now, when you're using your chop saw, we'll just do a little tutorial here. Never cross your arms out. Don't hold a board like this and cut like that, all right? Use safety glasses. Okay. Also, keep your hand a decent amount away from the blade. Just hold it nice and firm in place. Use your other hand here. You can use this to kind of see where your blade's gonna go, and then as soon as you're okay, and make sure it's out of the way, and you're good. You got a perfectly good board. Alright, I like to get all my risers in first, usually before I start doing my treads, just so I don't mess them up, but just, of course, sake of example, I will show them to you now. So, I have my 2 treads cut. Everything's at 36 inches, so if you want to leave it a little less, then that's fine, but understand that all this pressure-treated lumber, especially if it's pressure-treated pine, it's all going to shrink up a little bit. So that's why, when you're using deck boards or wood, especially with these steps, always butt them against each other, okay? I promise you they'll shrink up and they will give you a little bit more space. Now always look for your nice side, okay? Also, if you have any cupping, which is gonna be basically this rounding of this board, if you have any cupping that's severe, I prefer to put the cup side up, okay? So let's say this is rounded this way for some reason, I would put it up and then try to put screws in it to try and bring that down, okay? So here's pretty much what you'd have as a finished product. Everything's butted in. It's even amount spacing from either side. You've got these two together, and then you want to have right at about 1 inch overhang here, okay? Which we have about 1 1/8 inches, all right, which is perfectly fine because we routed down these. So 1 inch, 1 1/8 inches, that's perfect. And then we want to have at least 10 inches here, and we have 11 1/8. So that's perfect. Gives you enough plenty for your foot, and you're good to go. Now, normally I would always recommend also to pre-drill before you put any screws in these deck boards, but you can just drill into the face if you'd like. I recommend pre-drilling them, just for future reference. 2 per deck board is usually what I recommend, okay? About 1 inch in from the outside. And you want these screws to be flush with the head, right? Flush with the top if you can. Now, if we pre-drilled this like we normally do, you wouldn't get all this fuzzies, all right? But we are a little bit pressed for time, and like I said, only a few years and I'm fine with this deck. So pre-drill them best you can with a countersink, with a wedge and countersink is the best way of doing it. But this way also does just fine. So I do 2, about 1 inch, 3/4 to 1 inch in on all of these. And I like to use 3-inch screws pretty much for everything but the top part of a handrail, so I'll show you that. Also, what's nice is if you have a square, you can put a square here, mark a little chalk line just so you have real nice straight. So the one that you can't do about 1 inch in from the edge is this last screw, okay? Because you're 1 inch back is where the wood starts. So usually on that one, I'll do about 1.5 inches, okay? For this front one. About 1.5 inches, and then the other one's gonna all be 1 inch. So do that with all stair treads, and then you've got yourself an awesome set of staircases. Okay, so we finally finished the stairs up. We actually finished kind of refreshing the whole rest of it, but I'll kind of show you maybe that in a couple other videos. But the stairs is pretty much how they came out. So we've got our everything that we talked about with our risers, our deck boards, everything, but now you can pretty much see the rails in place. So we have our 4x4s, one at the bottom, one at the top. Sometimes I like to drop one in the middle, but I didn't really feel like this one needed it. It's a short enough span. As soon as I start getting to the 7 feet, or as soon as I start getting to overall like 12s, that's where I really try to chop it up in half. But this is under 10, so I kind of left it with just one because I think it looks a little bit better too. We've got our pickets here on the side, the aluminum pickets. They screw to the outside. We've got them under 4 inches spacing, and this is pretty much just what the finished product looks like. I've got a little bit of touching up that I want to do, but we needed to get it done kind of quickly just because this one's my house. But it is, dude, I'll show you a picture of what it looked like before and after. It's miles different. I'm surprised none of us died going up these previous stairs before, but now they're nice and sturdy. So also, I don't recommend jumping on stairs. No running with scissors and no jumping on stairs. So that's pretty much what they look like. That's pretty much how you go through and build a set of stairs. I know I kind of sped through a few things. It definitely takes you a lot of time to practice and learn, but I hope maybe if you've already built some stairs before, you kind of got some little tips and tricks and a little bit of definitions that you maybe didn't have before. So if you have any questions or maybe you want to go into more detail, just throw it in the comments below, and I'll be more than happy to go into some more detail if anybody has any questions. Yeah, so if you like the video, comment and like below, and if you want to get notified every time that we come up with new material, subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. It will let you know when we come out with some new videos, and you can watch some stuff and help you learn some carpentry. Again, my name's Cameron, and this is Remodeling America.